Welcome everyone. The moment while we're getting everyone in from the waiting room, and then we'll get started. All right, looks like everybody's in. Welcome. Thank you for being here. This is an online talk with Mike Johnson of Sam Malouf Woodworker, presented by the Malouf. I am your host, Seth Pringle. I'm a program manager here at the Sam and Alfreda Malouf Foundation for Arts and Crafts. We've been doing these online talks, since the shutdown. If you're new to us, you should know we have some of our previous talks on our YouTube channel. Just search for The Malouf on YouTube, and you'll be able to view those. Got a few more people coming in. Welcome, everyone. Okay. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you especially for making a donation to the Malouf with your ticket. These donations are very crucial right now as we have a lot of lost revenues, as you might imagine, with not being able to do tours in the house and things like that. So thank you very much, however much you're able to give. We're very excited that this talk has actually sold out. We maxed out our capacity on Zoom here, so it's very exciting. People are excited to hear from Mike and see this talk. So before we get started, before I introduce Mike, I want to start out with an acknowledgement of native lands. The Sam and Alfreda Malouf Foundation for Arts and Crafts acknowledge the Tongva people as the traditional land caretakers of Tovangar, or the Tongva world. This area includes the Los Angeles Basin, South Channel Islands, San Gabriel and Pomona Valleys, and portions of Orange, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work for the Taraxatum, or indigenous peoples, in this place. As an institution located on unceded indigenous land, we pay our respects to Hanukvatum ancestors, Ahihirom elders, and Ivuhinkem, our relatives, relations, past, present, and emerging. Okay, so before I introduce Mike, I also want to let you know that we're going to do a question and answer at the end. So if you have any questions for Mike, please type those into the chat at any time during the talk. The chat box, just type it in there, and then we will get to it after Mike's slideshow presentation. So yeah, I hope you guys have. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions about whatever you want to hear from Mike. So. Without further ado, Mike Johnson was born in Covina, California, and raised in San Dimas, California. He graduated from Long Beach State in 1980 with a degree in industrial arts. From a young age, he was interested in woodworking and knew of Sam Malouf as he followed Sam's career in newspaper and magazine articles. Married to Joanne in 1980, he credits his bride for his opportunity to work with Sam Malouf. She insisted that he introduce himself to Sam when they saw him in a local department store in 1981. Sam invited Mike to visit the shop, which he did the next day. Sam offered Mike a job, and he accepted it immediately. In 2017, Mike and Joanne took ownership of Sam Malouf Woodworker Incorporated. Joanne serves as business manager, and Mike continues to work in Sam's original workshop, along with their son Stephen's help. Mike maintains a strong passion for his craft after now 40 years of working for the Malouf organization. All right, I'm going to hand it over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Seth, and thank you to all those who have turned into this episode of Makers Talk. Although I intend to show lots of examples of work I have either made on my own or pieces I have helped Sam make for his business, this is really meant to be a tribute to Sam and his work. A tribute by someone who feels extremely fortunate to have had Sam take me along for the ride. I never have felt comfortable being called an artist. I much prefer being called a craftsman. And I can honestly say that I have always been content, satisfied, and above all, extremely honored to have had Sam Malouf call me one of his craftsmen. Seth had asked me if I might share the story of how I met Sam and how I came about working at the Malouf shop. But first, I would like to back up and share a couple of stories that led up to that encounter. It was at this lecture I attended in Beverly Hills in March of 1980 with some of my classmates from Long Beach State that I first saw and heard Sam Malouf speak and also experienced his furniture firsthand, as Sam had brought examples that the audience could look at during intermission. During his lecture, Sam introduced Jerry Marcotte as his assistant, and little did I know, but 11 months later, I would be working for Sam and being trained by Jerry. A short while after graduation, this issue of Fine Woodworking magazine arrived at my parents' home, and I remember having a long conversation with my mother about how neat it would be to have the opportunity to work under someone like Sam. And in 3 months, I would know. Joanne was 19. I was 22 when we married in November of 1980 and moved into our first home in San Dimas. Now, it turns out that our landlords knew of Sam and lived just a couple of blocks away from Sam in Altaloma. After learning of my interest in woodworking and my knowledge of Sam, they told me that they should take me to meet Sam sometime. Now, the reason for mentioning these events is that after all these years, I still am amazed at how naturally it seemed to all come together for me to meet Sam and start working for him. And then just like that, it happened. While shopping in JCPenney's at the Montclair Plaza, I spotted Sam and Frida across the store and whispered to Joanne about who it was. I was hesitant, but she prompted me to introduce myself. Sam was gracious to break the ice and say hello first. In our conversation, he invited me up to the shop. I came the next day. After more conversations with Sam at his home, he offered me a job and I started the following Monday. In this picture, taken not long after I started, Sam had recently turned 65. So when most people were ready to retire, Sam was just halfway through his career. He lived to be 93, so I ended up working the second half of his nearly 60 years of building fine furniture. So this is what the shop looked like when I started. The big machine that you see right in the middle of the shop with that long flat surface is actually a 16-inch joiner, and it now sits outside the shop for the visitors to view. We call it a piece of yard art now. The spiral staircase that you see on the left is the same one that's in the museum house. This is the way the shop floor always looked, full of furniture. We looked forward to Sam going away so we could have the chance to catch up. Sam was a hands-on boss involved in every piece to leave the shop. About this next slide, I've written this short account of an event in Sam's life, a big event, yet just one of many accolades that were bestowed on him to show just how unordinary working with this humble woodworker was. Sam was certainly established well before I started for him, if not, and he had national, if not worldwide recognition by the time I started in 1981. But the year 1985 left no room for doubt in anyone's mind. That year, Sam became the first craftsman to receive a Genius Grant from the MacArthur Foundation. The grant is bestowed solely on the basis of talent, and some have suggested that it would be the equivalent to winning a Nobel Prize if there were a category for craft. The interviews and articles in several major periodicals and newspapers went on for months, but never really stopped. Hardly a week went by without some well-known writer and their photography crew there to try their take on capturing the essence of this mild-mannered woodworker with the rock star status. This photograph is from People magazine, January 1986. This commission, Sam's largest, started in 1989 and completed over the next 2 years, included 76 pieces of furniture for a large corporation in a downtown LA high-rise. This photo shows the main conference room. That table is 18 feet in diameter. 28 of these executive swivel chairs were used throughout the 2 floors of the company occupied. We also made furniture for the CEO's office and 2 smaller conference rooms, as well as public seating in the hallways. This next series of slides shows a few pieces from a body of work I made on my own time at home in my garage shop. The building of these 1/4 scale miniatures were taken with the goal of making them as authentic as possible, down to the last detail, including scaling the joinery accurately and laminating the rocker runners exactly like their full-size counterpart. To date, I have made 45 of these 1/4 scale miniatures of Malouf furniture. Sam loved to take photographs with these pieces, and he often would, when a photographer was following him around the house, he would grab them up and hold them for a photo. And so these are a couple from magazines. This is a double rocking chair that is made of fiddleback maple. This is a piece in progress, and it's in amongst patterns that I've reduced from Sam's patterns from full scale to 1/4 scale. These are a couple more examples. This is a new rocker design that Sam made after he married Beverly Malouf, and it was a wedding present for her. So we call this new design there on the left, the Beverly Rocker. And the other piece was a hornback chair, and this one is a set of low backs with a pedestal table in Brazilian rosewood. And this is an example of a drop leaf table shown with the mechanism that holds the leaves up. And this is made out of a wood we call zircote. And I think it was one of the woods that come off nicely with the smaller scale. All of the high schools from the Chaffee Joint Union School District would send 2 of their top students to an annual Saturday workshop held at Chaffee High School in Ontario, California. For 6 years, I instructed the annual class in making a sculpted letter opener, a simple project that could be finished in a day. I designed the piece inspired by the horn of the Malouf rocking chair to give students experience in the kind of shaping required to build a piece of Malouf furniture. The next series of slides were taken while on a missions trip to Kenya with Empowering Lives International. I was asked to go help build a woodworking shop for an orphanage started by that organization, who was at the time expanding their trade school for their older residents. I was pleased that I was allowed to bring our son, Stephen, on this 17-day trip to help, and it turned out being a significant experience for the both of us. We installed both electrical and pneumatic systems, as well as built benches and storage cabinets. We also traveled to Nairobi to purchase tools, machinery, and lumber for the shop. From home, we brought with us patterns for a spinning top game, and were able to finish 4 of them and left the patterns so that they could make more. The game proved to be a hit with both the kids and adults. It has been encouraging to hear through a newsletter that I received that the wood program is still up and running, and that it continues to help residents earn money with projects like beehive boxes that have been sold to local farmers. So who and what is Sam Malouf Woodworker today? It has been suggested by some that it was a lucky circumstance for me to end up with Sam's business, when in fact, it was spelled out in Sam's will for that to happen. In 2017, ownership of Sam Malouf Woodworker was transferred to me. Now with my wife, Joanne, as business manager, and our son, Stephen, as my shop assistant, we continue to work in Sam's original shop under an exclusive licensing agreement with the Sam and Alfreda Malouf Foundation to build Sam Malouf designed pieces. We are honored to be the only company eligible to these rights. Although we cohabitate on the same piece of property, we remain a separate business from the foundation. Sam, before he passed, encouraged us to introduce new designs as we saw fit, emphasizing that if we stay static, we would not be true to what he was doing. But our intent will be to stay well within the style and design elements that have become associated with Malouf furniture. This page gives you the information you need about how to find us on social media. The best way to see what we're doing is to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, we invite you to visit our new website that was just launched for this new year. It features several categories of furniture with examples of each. Also on our site, you will find a link to our online store where you can purchase accessories and smaller pieces of furniture. The next several slides will be some of the furniture we've made in recent years. And so these are all made by Sam Malouf Woodworker after Sam's passing. The rocker and table set on the left there is made out of an exotic wood called cocobolo, a wood that I don't particularly like working with, but it is absolutely beautiful when you get it polished out. The quilted maple rocker on the right is also a very, very showy wood. We like using it as well. This is a dining set with low backs and a large diameter pedestal table. This is in a house in Newport Beach, California. This is a set that we've just made recently out of a wood that actually grows native in Northern California. It's a walnut called Clairol Walnut. And Clairol Walnut tends to be a little redder, a little more highly figured than traditional Eastern black walnut, and really comes off well in Sam's furniture. And that top of that pedestal table is made from a cross section of a Clairol walnut tree trunk. And so you get the natural edge all the way around with the sapwood, and it makes for a really interesting tabletop. These pieces here are from a client's home in Kansas City, and on the left you see a very large sideboard with a natural edge Clairol walnut top, and then the dining table is made out of a single piece slab of Clairol walnut. The dining chair, this is an interesting story about this client in that he has furniture from probably as long as maybe nearly 20 years before Sam passed, and really stayed with us seamlessly beyond Sam's passing, and we continue to visit his home with delivering new pieces regularly. And we added 2 chairs to that dining set that Sam originally made the original ones for. This is a photograph in their entryway of 2 pieces made out of zircote, a low-back settee, and a pedestal table, and you can just see the pedestal of a hall tree there too. This is a piece I was asked to participate in a show and here at the Malouf, and so I decided that I would like to make a new piece and make a piece that I couldn't remember seeing photographs of one that Sam had ever made. So I call this a blanket chest, or some people would refer to it as a hope chest. But my goal was to incorporate a number of Malouf themes in this piece that are very, much themes that you see throughout Sam's work. So the first thing you'll notice is this continuous hinge top that I was able to incorporate with the lid of this box. And then also you see the construction of the case is typical case construction of Sam's work. And you see the lid there open, how the continuous hinge operates, and then there's a little ebony prop for the lid. And then the details you see on the chest here on the left, you see the cedar lining in the bottom of the chest, and it also has cedar lined drawer bottoms. And then the photograph on the right shows the clasp and the ebony pin that holds that lid shut. I really enjoyed building this piece, and I hope to do others in the future. These next few photographs are going to show a series of fish sculptures that my son and I have really enjoyed doing over the last couple of years. Sam, the fish sculpture that you see in the upper right is similar to some of the ones that Sam would do early on in his career. Sam could draw absolutely beautifully, and he could grab up a piece of scrap wood and draw these, what I basically call kind of mid-century style rigid fish forms, and he would mount them on these brass rods and sell them as accessories with his furniture. Well, my son and I just decided to kind of take it a little bit further and use these pieces of wood that really make kind of interesting sculpture bases, and then give the fish just a slight amount of suggestion of movement, so there's a little bit of a kick to the fish. And so these are just some more examples of these interesting pieces of wood that we've used for sculpture bases, and some of these sculptures have gone into some interesting places in people's homes, and it's just been kind of a fun diversion from the furniture, and something that we've been able to kind of collaborate together on. One person can hold the fish while the other person stands back and gives their opinion on just where the placement should be, and it's been a good experience for the two of us to work on something together like this. This is one of our larger ones. That's actually 54 inches in length. And I really like using the Clairol Walnut for the fish, although we've used several woods, but I like the Clairol Walnut in that it's really has a lot of figure. I think this is a real interesting base because it's kind of gnarly and kind of almost reminds you of possibly the bottom of the ocean or something, or a stream bed. And that's actually a burl cap. So the burl on the side of the tree has this gnarly look on it, and we flatten one edge and make a base out of it. This is just showing you our shop and a recent large order of low back chairs that we worked on. And so we can even though we're just a small family business, we can continue to take on larger commissions like this, and we welcome all this kind of work. We include this picture because it has an interesting story. The picture on the left is Sam photographed in front of a tree that was at the old site. This was an enormous avocado tree that Sam claims was the reason why he bought that piece of property originally. The tree is hard to describe how enormous it was, but he would often photograph under it and spread out his furniture, and so you see lots of pictures taken under this tree. Well, as you all know, Sam was moved, and when this 210 freeway extension came through, and because of that, several trees actually were able to be transplanted up to the new piece of property. But unfortunately, this tree was too big and too old to make that move. So Sam insisted that he get the wood, and it came up in a big trunk section to our new piece of property here. And it was milled up finally and put into our shed. And we basically kind of knew that it would be a number of years before it was ready to use. And so almost kind of forgot about it. Well, when we went in to look at it one day, we were really rather upset at the fact that the bugs had gotten into it so bad. And by the time we got all that under control, it really wasn't too much usable wood, but we were able to get a few pieces of furniture, and these are some examples of what we've made with the avocado wood. This is an all wood occasional chair and a little pedestal table to go with it. I wanted to show these two pieces because we've recently made as pieces from what I would consider earlier era of his career. These would typically be either from the late 50s or early 60s, the furniture that he was making during that time. The big sideboard on the left was made from a photograph of one that Sam had made, and the client wanted us to replicate that piece. And so this is what the results of it. The doors actually have touch latches. The piece on the right is a little living room side table that incorporates several elements of Malouf design. If you look at the top, you see what I call the signature Malouf joint. It's where a lathe turned element comes up through the top of the table and is actually wedged and splined. And that look that you see there, and is so much a theme throughout his early work, is showcased in this piece, as well as the breadboard ends. And then the shelf is incorporating cork, which was very much an element that Sam was using during that era as well. This piece is in our showroom, and it's basically shown to show you how we can showcase this natural edge, both in a tabletop and then in an element like this mirror. And this piece is designed to go in an entryway, or it could possibly be used in a dining room as a small buffet. The piece is fairly large, so we would take a pretty good size entry to use it in. This is just an example of a big dining trestle table with a single piece natural edge top. I really can't even begin to tell you how many of these we made, several. And the wood can be absolutely beautiful. And this is the same kind of construction in a coffee table. So because of oftentimes the mass in these natural edge pieces, we like to kind of beef everything up to kind of go along with that mass. But here again, you see that Malouf joint showcased in the top of that table. This is an interesting little piece in that the client requested what they call the collection cabinet. And I wanted to make the outside of the cabinet very simple and just be clasped with this ebony pin. And inside the cabinet, I decided that I would use a contrasting wood. And Sam had collected years ago quite a bit of a wood called Japanese ash, which really works nicely and is a very stable wood and is I think a appropriate wood for drawers, and I think it can be really pretty because of its grain pattern. I'm not sure exactly what their collection was. They never really told me, but it'd be interesting to see sometime. This is a photograph showing both a child's rocker and a full-size adult rocker. The child's rocker is actually fashioned after the very first one that Sam made for his grandson, Aaron. And if you ever tour the Malouf residence, you'll see that chair where on the very back of the crest, Sam carved Aaron's name. The first one that Sam made for Aaron had an upholstered seat, like Sam was building rockers at that time. An interesting fact is that every seating piece prior to 1970 were all upholstered. It wasn't until after 1970 that Sam introduced the all-wood seat. And so I've made a couple of these, and I've made them both with the upholstered seat, and this little one here has an all-wood seat. As another interesting fact is that Sam eliminated this undercarriage that you see in this piece in his later work. So in the full-size rocker that you see, and that's an example of how we build it today, it doesn't have that undercarriage. Sam felt like it was distracting and made the piece less sculptural. And as his joinery became more sophisticated and more glue surface, they were stronger, and he felt like he could eliminate that undercarriage. This chair here was a special commission that we did. We've actually made a number of them now. It's named the Scott chair after a very good friend of the Malouf called John. His name was John Scott. John Scott was a member of the foundation board, and he approached us and said, you know, I would really like a couple chairs for my living room, and I'd love the low back chair, which by the way is designed for dining room seating. But he says, I want it for living room seating. So we took the chair, we redesigned it, made it lower, we made it deeper, we made it wider, and we gave it this upholstered seat. And so this, along with another one, sat along a large coffee table in his beautiful Manhattan Beach living room overlooking the ocean. But we do take on large commissions occasionally, and this commission was actually made while I had a couple coworkers still, and this large commission of low back chairs was made for a 150-foot motor yacht being built on the East Coast. They're made out of a wood called sapele, and the client provided that wood so that it would match the other woodwork on the yacht. A very interesting commission for us, and be interesting to see that yacht someday. This is an example of a chair that was one of the very last pieces that Sam designed. We call it an occasional chair because it's designed for living room seating. It's upholstered with vintage Jack Lenore Larson fabric, and I have the opportunity to reproduce this chair later on this year. I show this commission because it's something that we just recently finished. The wood in this is English brown oak. And what's interesting about this is that table that you see there was made by Sam in the late 1960s, along with a beautiful sideboard to match. And a very good client of ours purchased both of those pieces and brought them to us to be restored. And while he was with us, he says, Mike, I want you to build the seating for it. He says, I decided not to buy the seating at auction because Sam's early chairs can be a little bit small and narrow. And this is a rather large man, and he requested that we build the seating, and they wanted benches for the sides. and these two hornback chairs for the host and hostess chairs. Here you can see those a little bit more detail. And this English brown oak is something that what really makes the story interesting is that he was able to, we had enough wood to make the benches out of the same batch of English brown oak that Sam originally made that table and sideboard. And so the client was just really happy that they came from the same wood. This is a piece that has been photographed a lot lately, and it was really the very last piece that we helped Sam build and produce before he passed. Sam was working on this piece literally 3 months before he passed away. The prototype of this piece still sits in his widow Beverly's bedroom, and we've had the chance to actually reproduce it 2 more times for a client in Canada and one on the East Coast. A piece that it may be a little bit hard to get in and out of, but very comfortable once you're there, and very graceful. And I think when I think of it being Sam's last piece, I think it's an appropriate look for a piece going out on. This is a big dining room slab. That slab is I think 66 inches wide, which is hard to believe. And then these low backs have actually been scaled up slightly because of the massiveness of that slab. Next, I'd like to show you a few pictures of accessories that we've added to what we do here at Sam Malouf Woodworker. These pieces are either sold in the Malouf bookstore here on the property, or they're also can be found on our online store. This is a little paperweight that showcases that joint that we've talked about already. And here is a board, you could call it a cutting board or a bread board, showcasing that joint again. This one has been raised up on these 4 little feet. So it's about 1 inch off the countertop, and we're able to showcase that joint again. This is a little set of coasters. Our son Stephen is really the one who kind of heads up our line of accessories and tries to keep them stocked so that we always have some to send out for gifts. A really good source for gifts that are unique to here. One of the criteria that we try to incorporate in these accessories is to give them something that's unique to here, some form of a Malouf design element, or something that makes them different than just the accessories you can buy anywhere. So you know, all of our accessories don't necessarily have a Malouf design element, but we're hoping that they'll all remind people of their visit. Here's just a natural edge piece of Clairol Walnut that people just seem to love. They just love to have this on their kitchen counter, and they can serve their guests their cheese and crackers, or maybe it's just a place to showcase a nice piece of wood. This little board that seems to be one of our most popular has a unique shape, and we decided to give this one it's the thing that makes it unique to here is that it's the actual arm pattern for the rocking chair. And so if you could envision that as being the rocking chair arm, of course that arm would be thicker, but we also drill the hole in the top part of the handle up there where it could be hung on the wall of your kitchen or someplace, and it makes a nice little board to serve your guests. The next section we want to show is another thing that we find ourselves doing a lot of now, and that's restoration of Sam's early work. These 2 chairs really vividly show how well this wood can come back when we completely sand down the piece and restart the oiling process. once we do that, we're committed, and the process can really take a considerable amount of time, but we really feel like the results are just well worth it. And you can dramatically see here that we almost wonder if these chairs were used somewhere outdoors with as weathered as they look, but you know, the wood is still there, even though it's been obscured by dirt or sun bleaching and that kind of thing. But we're able to sand through that and start the oiling process and bring them back to really a like new condition. Some more examples. This is actually a Rosewood Rocker, and the photograph on the left, it'd be hard to believe that's rosewood with as bleached out as it is. But then you see how it darkened up, and with new upholstery and the piece on the right, Stephen has matched up the photo so you can see it before and after. Here he's taken the leaves off a drop leaf coffee table and finished one up and left one in its sun bleach condition to show you how dramatically that wood can come back. We also want to show that we will travel to clients' homes. We've been literally all over oiling and restoring furniture. If at all possible, we really prefer to have the furniture brought back to our shop where we're accustomed to working and have everything we need. But occasionally we'll make these trips, and here you can see we're working on a few pieces in people's yards or in their offices and things like that. Double rocker out, I think that was out in Palm Desert in California, and I really like this picture that Joanna's taken from a second story down on a table that was considerably sun bleached, and you can see how the rubbing and oiling is bringing that color back. This was at a High Sierra ranch up in the High Sierras of California, Central California. Well, I have other interests as well. I keep quite busy at Sam Malouf Woodworker, but I enjoy the outdoors. I enjoy traveling and probably especially spending time with family. The photo on the left there is a recent fishing trip to Alaska, and here's Joanne and I on a Alaskan cruise. And here's the family, and you know, we conquered a escape room, and so here's the after picture. I want to point out who's here. This is Stephen, and we're going to start on the right. This is Stephen on the right, and he's our son, and he's the one that helps me in the shop. And next to him is his wife, Stephanie. And I want to really thank Stephanie for all the help that she's given to helping me put together this presentation. She's not only helped me load the photos, but type the script, and she's been really helpful in doing that. And in the middle, you see my wife, Joanne, and next to me is our daughter, Sarah. And next to her is our future son-in-law, Mark. And so we're happy to be able to introduce the family to you here. I feel extremely fortunate that Sam lived such a long, productive, and giving life. But on May 21st, 2009, at age 93, Sam peacefully passed, or as he would say, went away. As Sam requested, my coworkers and I built this pine casket for him. He insisted that his not outshine the one we built earlier for his wife, Elfrida. In closing, I would like to share with you an excerpt from the eulogy I was asked to give at Sam's memorial service at the Krizky Chapel, Claremont School of Theology, June 9th, 2009. Sam was my inspiration for woodworking, and I feel privileged to have had him as my mentor as well. The life lessons learned in the shop and elsewhere from Sam went well beyond the how-to of our craft. Sam was driven by an unfailing enthusiasm for the work that was his life. This was one of the qualities that I came to admire about him most. It was because of this never diminishing passion for what he was doing that enabled him to be able to say that his favorite piece of furniture was the one he was working on at the time. I believe that in each new piece that he made, he saw room for improvement. So he would continually make minor adjustments in the curves of his patterns. The shaping of the assembled pieces and the placement of what has become known as the hard line, or the edge where two planes come together to accentuate the form, has always been evolving. All these slight changes were an effort to improve on what he had made previously. Let me show you, boys, what I'm doing were familiar words that often ring out from the room that Sam was working in. So with my coworkers, we would come in and have Sam show us a new idea or shape that he was considering. Sometimes he was confident and sure. Other times he was open to the exchange of ideas and might ask for our opinions. And sometimes he even used our suggestions. Sam had a learn by doing philosophy. Usually with just a few words of instructions, he would then let us go to see how we could do on our own. I remember Sam telling me, keep one eye on your work and one eye on me. That way you will learn what I am doing too. Well, I soon realized that Sam was keeping an eye on me also. It always amazed me how from across the room he could say, Mike, I think a little more needs to be taken off. And after walking over to the piece that I was shaping, he would finish his sentence right here, pointing to the spot that needed more work. Then I would stand back, look, and realize he was right. Sam had an incredible eye for shape and form. In some ways, this may be his greatest gift to the world. For him, creating these forms came easy and natural. For me, mastering what he wanted took time. So since we were learning by doing, there was more shaping and more sanding and more scrutiny and more shaping and more sanding and more time. Then gradually at some point, this changed to passing nods of approval and words like, you're doing a beautiful job. Now with the sensuous curves of Sam's designs, the bandsaw was unquestionably the most important tool in his shop. When he was using it, you did not disturb him. Phone calls would need to wait. Sam was in his element. This was his machine and he owned it. I'm speaking about ownership in the same way that an athlete who has risen to the top of his sport because of his skill and ability owns the field he plays on. The way he used the machine and what was sort of a freehand cutting style, or some may call bandsaw sculpting, has become legendary among the woodworking world. It brought many people to his woodworking classes just to see him in action. The oohs and ahs from his amazed audience were priceless to those of us who were accustomed to his technique. You see, Sam was self-taught, and some of his methods quite dangerous, especially for a novice. So he wisely began telling his classes not to try this at home. Yes, Sam was a showman and he loved to perform. Often when walking guests through the shop, he would stop at the bandsaw, grab up a piece of wood with everyone crowded around and cut out a chair arm. In not more than 2 minutes, the whole thing could be completely roughed out using only the bandsaw. Then he would hand it to a lucky guest as a souvenir. I mentioned earlier that Sam's mentoring included more than the passing on of woodworking skills. Sam loved to take us to lunch. Afterwards, we would sometimes stop at an art exhibit at one of the colleges or go to one of the galleries in town. These field trips and others, like going to Anderson Ranch in Colorado, where he gave an annual summer workshop, and the trips made to Washington, D.C. for his retrospective show at the Smithsonian's Renwick Gallery, broadened our view of art and of crafts. These experiences also helped in our understanding of the significance that Sam held in the world outside his little Alta Loma workshop, and we are very thankful for him to have included us. If I had to describe Sam in just 2 words, I would say he was the woodworker's woodworker. From the person working for pleasure in his garage on weekends to the skilled professionals, they will all know what I mean, because Sam was not only an enormous influence and inspiration to countless woodworkers worldwide, he also freely gave his time and shared whatever he knew openly. To Sam, I would say, thank you for making me feel like part of your family. Thank you for providing a way for your legacy to continue, and thank you for taking me along for the ride. I love you and will miss you deeply. I would like to say thanks to all those who joined in on this online talk and for your donation to the foundation. And now I will let Seth open it up for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. That was amazing. And we do have several questions. You guys can keep typing questions into the chat. We will likely not be able to get to all of them. But feel free and we'll see how many we can get through here. So first question from Brian. He's asking, can you describe Sam's design process? Did he work in sketch form, models, or both? What kinds of things inspired him? Any particular stories you can share about collaborating with him in the design process? Thanks.
Yeah. Sam didn't spend what I would consider a whole lot of time in the design process. Oftentimes, because he was always building off of something that he had made previously, and what I'd like to say is that he was taking his designs and perfecting them, if you will. It wasn't like he was making one design and then waking up the next day and making something completely different. Sam's career was what I would call one of just subtle evolution. And so his work, oftentimes making a new dining chair, would be taking one of these patterns that you actually see hanging right there behind Seth off the wall, drawing it full scale on the floor with a Sharpie, standing back and deciding how he might tweak that a little bit to make it more pleasing. And also remember that as his career progressed, it went from a very linear mid-century look to a more sculptural, organic look as his career progressed. And so these subtle changes that he was making in his patterns were making them more sculptural, if you will. And so instead of making models or making drawings, about the only thing that he would make a drawing for would be for actually maybe a presentation of a drawing for a client if they requested it, and maybe the casework, because the casework seemed to be all customized for people's homes, and that maybe required drawings with dimensions. For his chairs and his more sculptural pieces, there were rarely drawings. And it was more of a, let's get started and see how it happens, and we'll cross the bridge of a problem when we get there. And so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, can you talk about how Sam worked with his clients in terms of developing, especially like custom orders and that, and how you have tried to, continue the business in that way, and the very personal way of working with clients?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was my experience of watching Sam over the years relate to clients that would come to the shop that, he was very vocal and opinionated as to what he felt like they should have. And so oftentimes he was good at talking them into whatever design it was that he wanted to make for them. That's not to say that he wouldn't do something for someone if they requested something special, but it was always that next design in Sam's head that he wanted to work on. And so if he could get that client to take it, then it would be satisfying for him. You know, we're in a kind of a unique situation here as we continue his business today, in that you know, we've really set a goal for ourselves not to go in any kind of drastic different direction. And so I intend to use the design elements that Sam gave us, but you know, he said that if we stay static, we wouldn't be true to what he was doing. He said that if we introduce pieces now and then, he says it'll be more true to what he was doing. But like I said, our pieces won't be in a drastic. They'll look like they came from the Malouf shop. I hope that'll answer that question.
And we have several woodworking questions. It looks like we have not a surprise, lots of woodworkers in the audience here. And so Fred is asking about the finish. He says your furniture has beautiful finishes. Can you describe the way you finish your pieces? And he also adds on to that. He says, I know Sam considered himself a sculptor as much as a woodworker. Can you describe how you carve the joints to give them a sculptural quality?
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll talk about the finishes briefly first. When Sam first started, he felt like he needed to use a finish that was very typical of the day, and so he started spraying his pieces with lacquer. Well, he soon decided that that's not the look he wanted. It gave a look that was a surface coating, a kind of what he would consider a plasticky look. And it wasn't what he wanted at all. And so it was just very early on in his career that he started experimenting with an oil finish, which was much more appropriate for our work and for also the environment in which our shop was. We never had a finishing room, and so this oil finish could be applied in a room that wasn't absolutely dust-free, like would be essential for like a lacquer finish. The oil finish evolved over the years, and it was basically a mixture of linseed oil, tung oil, and beeswax melted in solution. And it wasn't until about the 1970s that they started experimenting with replacing the beeswax with a hard oil component, anything from a natural varnish to a polyurethane finish. Well, about 25 years ago, Sam licensed the oil finish to Rockler stores. Rockler is a nationwide woodworking hardware store, and they've been manufacturing and selling the two-part finish. You can buy the wax oil or what we call the poly oil. And the real keys to the finish is prepping the wood properly first, so that the wood is sanded fine enough. And then when applying this oil finish, remembering that you're not applying a surface coating, and so you're not trying to leave any of this material on the surface. You're allowing it to soak in the wood, fill the pores of wood, and then wiping it off completely. And so if people make a mistake at all with our oil finish, is because they think they need to leave something on the surface, when in fact it needs to be wiped off completely, and then another coat and several coats applied. And what you're doing is slowly building up the pores of the wood with this hard oil finish. And Seth, if you'll remind me the second part of that question.
It was regarding the sculptural edges and
Yes.
finishing.
Yes. I can answer this question easily because it's what I spent the biggest part of my time doing. If you look behind Seth, this is the main machine room where Sam spent most of his time. And Sam would do the bulk of the machining and assembly in this room right behind Seth. And the pieces would come to us in a room just around the corner. And they would come to us in a state that I call kind of crude and bulky, because extra wood needed to be left around the joints to allow for that sculptural quality that became more and more part of his work, especially in the later pieces. So the wood that was left there, we had pneumatic tools to rough that out. But ultimately it came down to an array of hand tools, rasps and things to sculpt the wood down. And then I alluded earlier in Sam's eulogy about this hard line, and basically this hard line is something that was developed and became more sophisticated over the years to enhance the furniture, not intended to be anything like a surface carving or something decorative on the wood. It was made to enhance and accentuate the form. And so this was something that would evolve continually over his career. And it's something that really I felt, was something that took time to kind of master and get to flow properly. Your eye could really pick up when those lines weren't absolutely true.
Yeah, absolutely. I continually marvel at those edges on a regular basis. I have this question from Patrick that I think is a great question. In your early years, how did Sam react to your mistakes?
Well, there's a story that one of my coworkers was being trained on grinding out chair seats. And he came to Sam and he says, well, what if I ruin one of these? And Sam said, well, you may ruin a few, but you won't know until you learn to do these things. So he was patient with us in that way. He realized that we weren't going to learn this stuff overnight, and that mistakes would be made. I'll never forget something that my dad once told me, and he says, everyone makes mistakes, but it's the craftsman that can fix them. And so, mistakes are just part of life, and it's part of our work, and we try to avoid them at all costs, but they happen occasionally, and we're fortunate Sam had the kind of personality to not get too upset over that kind of thing.
So Cynthia asks, in addition to your son Stephen, do you have any other apprentices working with you or who have worked with you in the past?
Not since we have taken over as a family. We really only had this for well, I said since 2017, and we really are trying to to see if we can make a go of this. I think I've come to realize that there's something that can actually really truly be positively said about a family business that actually works, especially in today's world. I think so often, we grow up as families, and we just, we just sometimes just can't get along. And I've witnessed this happening. And so far, I guess I should be knocking on wood. We can actually work together. And I feel like that's something special. And, I think it's something that Sam would actually be pleased with. And so, it's our intent to stay this way for the time being. I hope that I can do this for a long time yet. If it comes to the point where I just can't work the way I am today, maybe we'll think differently.
So Terry asks, do you create the upholstery work in-house? And I'm wondering if that process has evolved over the years from, since the 50s, what that looks like, that part of the process.
Not too much evolution that way, but some of these new pieces, like that rocking chaise lounge that we had seen a couple pictures of, the upholstery inserts that we make are rather sophisticated to get the right shape, and are very time consuming. To answer your question about who does the upholstery, Sam has always had someone do his upholstery. Sam will make the upholstery insert, and it really is a collaboration between the furniture maker and the upholsterer, in that both people have to understand what the other one wants, if you will. And Sam was very particular with how he wanted his upholstery done, and would often, send things back if they weren't quite right. But he had people working for him that usually he would have for a long time, and so these people would get to the point where they could do the work like he wanted to. We today have someone we're very, very pleased with, and we, like I said, the upholstery that we do, we make the inserts and then send it to him.
Great. Kind of a related question from Jane. She's asking if Sam was interested in incorporating other materials like ceramic or metals or glass into the works.
Well, early on, I would say he was doing more of that kind of thing than in his later work. We've often restored tables like a coffee table that would have a tile top, or we even did one that had glass tiles. He was using in his early work that cork that we showed you some pictures of. So in his later work, I would say that there was maybe less and less of that, and maybe more details with contrasting woods and things like that. There's a lot of myths that float around with what Sam used and what he didn't use. I've even heard it said that Sam would not use any kind of metal hardware or any kind of screws or nails or anything like that. Well, that really is a myth. Wherever you see a plug that is a common theme throughout Sam's work is covering a screw that reinforces a joint or attaches a tabletop or that kind of thing. So Sam really wanted his work to hold up over time, and so he wasn't opposed to using those kinds of things, but generally you wouldn't see them. They would be covered up. And it's the same with hinges and things like that. You would rarely see traditional, commercial hinges. We would use hinges, but they would have metal pins in them and things like that, but you wouldn't see the metal.
All right, we have a few more questions. I know I have lots more questions, but we should probably wrap it up there. And I'll let everybody know we have been recording this, and we'll have it on our YouTube channel. So if you happen to come in late, or you had your Wi-Fi quit and you had to miss a few minutes or something, don't worry. We have it recorded if you want to go back to it, and I'll be emailing out a link to that. I included the website link for Sam Malouf Woodworker in the chat. It's pretty easy to find though. Or remember, samaloofwoodworker.com. Check that out. Check them out on the social media, like Mike said. Thanks everybody for being here. And Mike, I'll leave it to you if you have any final words for us.
Well, I just want to thank you all again for showing up. It's It's a pleasure to do this, and I'm very pleased that we were actually able to have a sellout crowd. That's amazing. We want to wish you all a good weekend, and stay well. Everybody needs to stay well and not come down with this virus. So we thank you, and so long.
All right, thank you so much, Mike, and to the family team at Woodworker. Thanks everybody again. Yeah, have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. Stay well. Take care.
Okay. Good night.